In 2017, Nintendo was on the ropes. The Wii U had just had a massive failure, and people were beginning to wonder, could Nintendo still hang with the likes of Microsoft and PlayStation? But then in March of 2017, they launched the Nintendo Switch. It not just changed things for Nintendo, but it reshaped the gaming landscape as we knew it. With over 150 million units sold to date, it not just saved Nintendo, but it brought joy back to gaming for many people. Whether you were playing it docked sitting on your couch or you were taking it on the go, whether it be at school, work, wherever the world might take you, Nintendo made gaming magical again with the likes of the Switch. Now, as we are on the final day of the Nintendo Switch, let's take a look back at this generation. Let's look at how the Switch saved Nintendo, changed gaming, and what it meant to me personally. The Nintendo Switch launched March 3rd, 2017, and was nearly impossible to get for almost 2 years. Nobody expected that, especially after what happened with the Wii U. When they first unveiled it and everyone saw the 20-something-year-olds on the rooftop at a party playing the console, I remember seeing so many analysts and major YouTubers arguing that it would fail for being underpowered, fail for not being a dedicated home console, and so many other unreasonable complaints. The thing is, the Switch was never meant to compete. The Wii U failed so miserably that would be the end of Nintendo and home consoles. They may never publicly admit it, but this was a successor to the 3DS. I remember the pre-orders of the Switch going live and everyone being surprised that it sold out in less than an hour. For those of you who may have not been around for gaming back then, things selling out fast wasn't common. The PlayStation 4 took almost 2 days to sell out. I remember going to my local GameStop about a week after pre-orders went up in 2013 and there was still PlayStation 4s available for pre-order. Granted, we all made less money back then so people didn't buy games how they do today, but it was still the dawn of a new day. The only time we ever saw anything like this before was the Wii in 2006. We saw journalists say that this was a blip, it wouldn't last. These days, we don't really take what gaming journalists say too seriously, but in 2017, it was gospel. I personally believe the Switch's build-up in year one was the first catalyst in killing video game journalism and contributing to the rise of YouTubers. The day the Switch launched was unlike any other I had ever seen. I was at that time working at Walmart, and I had planned to buy the Switch the moment it was stocked, then put it in my truck and get back to mixing paint and stocking hardware. Our location is kind of the centralized Walmart of Central Kentucky. It's the only one that wasn't ghetto or routinely had crime in the parking lot. There were so many people that had came and lined up before my shift even began, and my day started at 8 a.m. on that day. It wrapped from the video game section down towards the hardware section where I was, took a right turn and went all the way down to the entrance of the store and outside the building. There was at least 1,000 people there to pick up pre-orders and buy our limited stock. It probably goes without saying, but I was not able to get it day one, and neither was most people. It was unlike anything we ever saw before in gaming. The launch lineup was kind of weak, but there was one standout: The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Video games had been in a drought up till this point. Xbox was still in the early days of falling off, PlayStation 4 hadn't picked up yet, it would still be a few more months, and the PlayStation Vita was weeks away from being abandoned, and the 3DS was still viewed as a child's toy. The launch of Breath of the Wild changed everything. This took the series in a new direction, from an action-adventure game to more of a Dark Souls style game, but toned down for more audiences to enjoy, with the shrines added in as a somewhat puzzle feature, but more of a problem-solving thing to show off the features of the Switch, as well as some combat shrines. This became not just the inspiration, but the golden standard for this genre of games. These days, games such as Elden Ring take over the world because they scratch that itch that Breath of the Wild gave us. It's funny looking at it now, but I remember watching people review this game on YouTube and showing gameplay via setting up mirrors and trying to get around Nintendo's previous absolutely horrendous copyright takedown system, where basically if you showed gameplay at all, they were coming after you straight to your door. Breath of the Wild became the quintessential Switch game, and at one point it had nearly a 1000% attach rate. Video game journalists would once again say that this was only launch interest, that it would settle down. It never settled down. This led to Nintendo finally getting third-party support. We would see FIFA return to Nintendo consoles, Skyrim and Doom get ported, and a whole backlog of games from the PlayStation 3 and 4 that never made it to a Nintendo console previously. Funny enough, by the end of the generation, even PlayStation and Xbox were launching games on the Switch. Later in the year, we would see Splatoon, Mario Kart 8, and the launch of a titan, Super Mario Odyssey. This was and still is the biggest platformer, not just of the generation, but the century. This was a return to form for Mario. Everyone said it was the most Mario game since Mario 64, 20 years prior. There was a small controversy that I find odd and want to mention. This was the dawn of the era of identity politics, and video game journalists were trying to say that Mario in the Mexico level was offensive to Mexicans, but no Mexican was offended. This brought on the first civil war of the Switch, Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey. I remember seeing so many people fight online about this. It was really refreshing. It felt like being a kid on the playground arguing about if Mario Sunshine or Wind Waker was the better game. It's Wind Waker, and if you disagree, you're wrong and you need to seek medical help. When the Game Awards would come around in 2017, it was pretty polarizing. There were some games that nobody understood why it was there, like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and Horizon Zero Dawn. But then the big three, Persona 5, Breath of the Wild, and Mario Odyssey. This was the first time since Twilight Princess that we saw a Nintendo game competing in the big Game Awards. Mario Odyssey got there with barely 2 months on the market, really not even a month and a half, and Persona 5 became the little train that could. These 3 games being nominated launched a mass wave of video game revival that is still going on to this day. Persona 5 reignited JRPGs, Zelda gave birth to a Souls-like wave that wasn't essentially Dark Souls but had more going on with it. Mario reinvigorated platformers to the point that even PlayStation broke out of their own stubbornness and made their own Mario with Astro Bot. And it's steamrolling everyone while we wait for the next Mario. This could be a 2-hour video going over everything, and I may do that one day, but for now, I just want to touch on the big things, so let's skip to Smash Ultimate and then the events of 2020. The Wii U and 3DS had Smash games, but they didn't really hit the mark. If you were gaming in 2018, you already knew we had a massive fighting game drought. We had barely got Dragon Ball FighterZ, Mortal Kombat still sucked, Street Fighter wasn't recovered, Tekken wasn't vibing how it does today, and all the other major players had stepped out of the limelight. It was a hot, humid day in the Bluegrass on June 12, 2018. It was E3, and up to this point, Nintendo already had a massive showing. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torn of the Golden Country got announced, a new Mario Party, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Daemon Cross Machina, Fortnite was coming to the Switch, and then the announcement that stopped the world. It began showing Splatoon. People began checking out and winding down their streams, then the lights dim. It zooms in on the Inkling's eye, and there it is. Smash Ultimate. It got shown to the world for the very first time. Masahiro Sakurai was back at it again, and for the next few months, this is the only game anybody would talk about until we took a 2-week break for Spider-Man in September, then right back to Smash. The build-up to release was really weird, and we had so many leaks, the Grinch leak, fake leaks, and so much more. Everybody looked forward to every Nintendo Direct or event to reveal more characters. We still didn't know that everyone was back or the amount of DLC we would get. One thing led to another, and sure enough, everyone was back and this game took over the world. One YouTuber in particular, who I was lucky enough to meet when they were still small and had a good acquaintance with, was Etika. The reactions and content he made around Smash not only blew up his channel, but also drove hype and build up for the game that otherwise probably wouldn't have existed. Everyone was excited for it. Whether it was because they were a lifelong Nintendo fan or because they loved Etika, this was kind of the dawn of YouTubers and content creators being able to drive hype and excitement for a game. Just over a year later, Etika would unfortunately take his life, and it shattered the internet. I am a big believer that Etika was a big reason why the Switch was as popular as it was. If you're ever going through something, please know somebody will always listen, even if it's an internet stranger. There's always someone to vent to. Launch day finally came, and it was kind of interesting because there was mass amounts of people calling out from work. People were skipping school. I was one of them. I remember one of our professors told us a week prior that Smash Ultimate would not be an excused absence. It was a funny time to be a gamer. The day the game launched, I remember playing online with my friends all night. Nothing but us, pizza, and Sarku Japan. This would not just be our nightly routine for years to come, but it would be for so many others as well. And every single major Switch Direct thereafter for several years, we would get new character announcements, and it became a cultural thing really. It wasn't a gaming event without Smash. We would get characters from across the board, from niche franchises all the way to competitor IPs like Steve from Minecraft. The Nintendo Switch was already on top of the world with a big 2020 plan from niche small games, and one in particular was Animal Crossing. A game that was never really that big, but would become not just a household name this year, but the biggest video game in the world, not called Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto, or Call of Duty. The pandemic shut the world down, and we had no way to see our friends, enjoy holidays, or anything really at all. At its core, Animal Crossing is a life sim. You build your home, decorate it, create the island how you want it, and each person's experience is completely different. That made this a perfect pandemic game. I synced over 200 hours into its first month alone, and as a full-time college student and interning at a video game studio, That was not an easy task at all. My friends and I would meet up in each other's islands and make our own little games within the game. It was a heartwarming time and core memory that I'll keep with me forever. Everybody you know, even people who weren't gamers, had bought a Switch in 2020 for no reason other than the fact that it could play Animal Crossing. And this bolstered sales like crazy to the point that we are on the verge of the Nintendo Switch overtaking the PlayStation 2 to be the highest selling console of all time. The summer of 2020 would bring violent riots across the United States, setting cities on fire and everything else that transpired. As the world around me burned down, I was preoccupied with the launch of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, a remake nobody thought would ever exist. This showed us a different side of Nintendo, a Nintendo that was finally going back to their legacy. This would draw in so many people, and now here we are 5 years later, with Xenoblade being a juggernaut franchise for Nintendo, with them themselves stating that it is now a staple Nintendo franchise. The last 5 years of the Switch has been mostly dry, but had some major releases and lots of great memories. Tears of the Kingdom came out, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, lots of Kirby games, more Zelda spin-offs than you can count, the Mario 3D collection, which was kind of weird because they only had it out for a couple months and then just took it away from everybody. I got lucky enough that I got several copies of it, so I don't mind, but it's still kind of a weird thing for them to do. The end of the Switch is something I'll come back to one day, but now we will leave it here. I want more time to pass so that I can gauge it with nostalgia and experience more games at the end of the cycle. We did, however, finally get an OLED Switch, and playing games on the last few years on that thing, it was a treat. Games just look incredible. We saw a lot of tension though as the Switch aged and people just slowly stopped playing it. I can't say I blame them, but I do hate to have seen the Switch fall to the wayside for most people. The Switch 2 is a powerhouse, even able to play Cyberpunk 2077 in 4K at great performance, but without a doubt, this song and dance will continue. The Switch came out at a perfect time for me. I was in college, not a lot of money, and just trying to enjoy gaming. The Switch came along and instantly gave me access to hours of fun. The experience are not like what you got on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One way back then. I sunk hours and hours into Breath of the Wild when I got mine in 2017. I remember that September when I got mine, I was laying in bed playing Breath of the Wild. It was around 5 p.m. and if you're from the Cannon part of the United States, you know that this is the most beautiful time of the year. The sky was that off purple, the trees were red, yellow, every shade of fall you could think of. The grass was bright green, and you had that perfect fall breeze coming in, with that smell that you just can't describe, but only the East Coast understands. I had my window open, and everything was a vibe. I will forever remember that, and how it made me feel, playing Breath of the Wild that beautiful fall day. I'm becoming very nostalgic for it these days. In 2022, I moved to Mexico to experience life in a new country, and I absolutely hate everything about it. When I return to the East Coast, it's going to be back to Buffalo, not Lexington, and I will never complain about snow or cold ever again. This leads me to my next point. The Switch and its titles fill a void, helping me overcome homesickness when I feel that sickness. I will always launch Breath of the Wild and just run around, and it fills my heart with joy and makes me feel better. I will move back home, it's just a matter of finding the home that I want to buy, and this game will forever be a beacon in my life that became more than a game. I would meet some of the best people in my life and grow relationships I never imagined because of the Switch. I remember meeting random people from Twitter posts advertising Smash Ultimate room codes and joining their lobby, getting their Discord, and having a good time. There was one guy, who we have since lost to fatherhood and starting a family, who I would play Smash with every single Wednesday as if it was a religious session. He helped me get good at Smash way better than I could have ever expected. There for a while, very few people could beat me. Every single day of college, I took the Switch and the PlayStation Vita with me. I actually got to the point where I would play it during class. I have a weird hyperfixation where I would learn everything for school at the beginning of the semester and then not pay attention at all. This led me to a 4.0 GPA and lots of time spent gaming where I didn't need to be gaming. People would look at me weird playing stuff like Assassin's Creed and especially Xenoblade. Oh my god, if you've ever played a Xenoblade game or a Xeno game period, you always know that fan service of that game is gonna hit at the absolute worst possible time. I actually had one professor in Hawaii who picked up on this, and then we became very good friends, and now he is my fake boss for when I need references for jobs. It's actually kinda goofy. The Switch also benefited from collector's editions that were actually really cool. The Xenoblade Chronicles and Metroid Prime collector's editions that I have were incredible. Honestly, way better than what I have purchased from other companies in the past. The Switch actually launched a love for JRPGs I never expected to have. I enjoyed, the basics like Final Fantasy, Suikoden, Dragon Quest, and all those other games before, but the Switch opened the floodgates for the entire genre for me. I discovered games I never knew existed and grew a love for grinding games while listening to podcasts or binging YouTube videos. This has been spread out beyond the Switch for me, and now my JRPG collection is what grows faster than any other genre within my library, especially now that I'm going back to buy more and more retro games. So many of them are just so cheap. This is probably the most important part of my experience section and the most vulnerable I have ever been in a video. In June 2022, when I packed up my childhood home in the United States and I moved over 2,000 miles away to Mexico, I was initially excited, but the moment that truck was loaded and I went to bed that night before I left, my heart shattered into a million pieces. And I knew I was making a mistake, but I already signed a lease and there was nothing I could do about it. That night I couldn't sleep, and I loaded up Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I'm not spoiling anything about it, but the overall premise of that game is that you're riding high, then you get shot down. It's a prequel to Breath of the Wild, which was the riding high again section, and when you finish it, shot down in Tears of the Kingdom, then riding high again. That would tell the story of my time in Mexico. Without ever realizing it, that was foreshadowing what was to come for me. I was excited to move, and then I immediately hated it. I got a fat pay increase at the beginning of this year actually, letting me leave in a few months. I was genuinely supposed to be leaving and going back to America in just a couple months, but then I got laid off and that's derailed my plans. I'm not moving until I can buy a house in full, and unfortunately I was only a couple months away from being able to do that, but with this layoff I'm not going to be able to. It's going to be a much bigger delay. My whole experience was told via a random game on the Switch that I had finished in 2020, 2 years before I even moved. I spent a lot of time hating this country and wishing I never moved here. Every time I start a new JRPG, I know that it's going to take me 1 to 2 months to finish that game, and that's going to pass so much time being able to distract my mind and be able to get through this section of my life quicker without realizing it. Don't get me wrong, there are nice parts of Mexico, but Chihuahua is not one of them. The Switch has got me through this time, which without a doubt will be the most depressing time of my life. I will never be back here, and unfortunately, that also means we will never be back to the vibes and feelings that the Switch 1 gave us. I'm not too hopeful that the Switch 2 is going to live up to the Switch 1, but it was truly a remarkable system the Switch 1 was, and I will never forget this time in gaming history. The Switch really didn't just save gaming for me, but for so many other people as well. It has helped me through so many hard times. It has helped me through some of the craziest experiences of my life, and it has guided me and shaped me to become the person I was. The person I am today in 2025 is not the person I was in 2017, and a lot of the stories, characters, developments of this game and this console in general that we saw, there's things that are going to stick with me forever that really shaped who I am to this day. I will forever be grateful for the Nintendo Switch. Saying goodbye isn't always easy, especially when it was something that brought us so much joy. But endings leave room for new beginnings. The Switch 2 is just hours away, and if it captures even a fraction of what the Nintendo Switch was, we are in for some magical years of gaming ahead. So until then, let's say thank you to Nintendo for what they gave us the last 8 years, and with that being said, the next time you see me, we will be unboxing the Nintendo Switch 2, saying hello to a brand new console generation. I've been Crutandro. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. This was my hardest video to make for a very long while. And with that being said, try not to die, and I'll see you in the next video.